Fabian Cancellara at E3 Harold Baker, he put some cards on the table. Peter Sagan, he's unveiled a strong hand as well, winning Ghent-Wevelgem. Today, we're going to preview the Tour of Flanders. Which one will win, or will it be somebody else? Also on the show, we're going to have a look at the relationship between cyclists and triathletes. And what about running red lights? Most of us at some point have been guilty of doing so. Why do we do it? We're also going to discuss team leadership. This is the Bike Lane. I'm Matt Keenan. He's got Olympic Games gold medal. He's Scott McGrory. And that's Wade Wallace, MrCyclingTips.com.au. Let's get into it. The battle for team leadership, particularly at the big one, the Tour de France, it's even older than the combined age of Chris Horner and Jens Voigt, which is more than 80 years of age. It's as old as Coppi versus Bartoli, Le Mans versus Hinault, and Ulrich and Bjarne Riis. Scott, you love the F1s. It was put into sharp focus with Vettel and Webber, and there were great similarities between Wiggins and Froome from last year.
Certainly wasn't there? And look, this was one of those situations where Mark Webber should have won the Grand Prix in Malaysia last weekend. This is a cycling show, but I do love my F1s. But it was Vettel going against team orders to get the better of the older rider in the team. Now, Webber's 36, Cadel Evans is 36. Vettel is 25, TJ Van Garderen is 25. Slightly different in their hierarchy within those teams, but I think also seeing a leadership change at BMC as well.
One of the great things about the coverage, Wade, of the F1s is you hear the communication within the teams, and code 21 for the riders in that team to hit the clutch, so to speak. Wouldn't you dearly have loved to have heard what Sean Yates was saying to Chris Froome last year at the Tour?
Yeah, because I heard rumors of what was happening in the hotel rooms and stuff, and the arguments in the hallway and that. So, but I just love this battle for team leadership. It just adds to the drama, the whole story of cycling and every other sport. I always back the older guy, just because of their experience.
Just because you're on the brink of your 40th birthday.
And because I am the older guy now. Yeah. And yeah, so.
Well, there was an article written by Blazing Saddles in The Raw just a couple of days ago saying it is time for Evans to ride in support of TJ Van Garderen. Would you like to be John Lalonde having to deliver that instruction? And will he deliver it?
Well, you've got to also look at the pay packet as well. You know, they're paying Cadel Evans as a Tour de France winner. So they want him to win again, or at least be competitive again. But then you've got young guy TJ Van Garderen that's coming up that at the moment seems to have better form. I don't want to talk Cadel out because I want to see an Australian win again, and hopefully it is Cadel Evans.
I'd love to see him even on the podium.
Absolutely.
It'd be a great result.
But I think the situation is that he's now 36 years of age. When he was 34, he won the Tour as the oldest winner since World War II. He hasn't gotten faster in the last 2 years. So I'm just not sure if he's going to have the form to go for the win. So that's when you've got to back the younger rider.
And it's not the only team with the leadership battle. Obviously, there's the Froome and the Wiggins thing. That seems to have worked itself out. But then Richie Porte. Richie Porte deserves his chance, but I think he'll have to wait another year.
Yeah, he's up there, and I mean, it's great for him to be in Team Sky, developing into this Tour
Great
rider.
spot to be.
Yeah, and he'll be able to get that experience and support to be a contender, possibly with Green Edge one day or something, who knows?
Possibly. Now defend the Canadian, because over at Garmin Sharp, Andrew Talansky, who has not ridden the Tour yet, has said that he and rider Hagedal should go to the Tour as joint team leaders. Put your Canadian hat on.
Well, Hagedal has proven himself before last year at the Giro, and I was talking to a guy at Castelli last night, and they were in the wind tunnel testing with him all weekend, and they shaved 45 seconds off his time trial.
They took the jacket off.
Yeah, they took the jacket off probably.
Turn the heater up.
Yeah, and so, yeah, Hagedal, I can't see him winning another Grand Tour this year, just with the competition that's coming up, but he should be leading the team, that's for sure.
Yeah, and Talansky's nickname is the Pitbull. He's living up to it on and off the bike.
Yeah, look, before riding a Grand Tour and being competitive in one, you shouldn't be talking about being, you know, equal leader with someone that has won a Grand Tour. I think that's too early for Talansky. He may prove himself correct, but it's too early to say it.
He likes the pressure. So, if you were the team director, is it Van Garderen or is it Evans? And across at Garmin Sharp, Talansky or rider Hagedal? And where does Richie Porte fit into your plans? Tell us your thoughts. The Melbourne Cup, that stops the nation here in Australia, whilst over in Belgium, it's the Tour of Flanders that stops the nation. This weekend, we see the great Ronde van Vlaanderen. When did you fall in love with this race?
1985, I bought a VHS video of both Ghent-Wevelgem and the Ronde it was a guy in Bendigo, Robert Burns, actually used to bring those videos back in. It was the first time I saw any of the European races.
Got a few of them at home myself.
Yeah, now of course it featured Phil Anderson, and that's why I fell in love with, I guess, man love, man crush with Phil, but
That's okay.
it was also taken out by Eric van der Ruden, who became my sports director at Mappa years later.
What about you, Wade?
I was a latecomer to fall in love with Flanders, but I had always seen the photos of the Mur and the excitement, and I understood it was something significant, but it wasn't until 2011 when SBS showed it live for the first time that I actually got to see it live. And seeing how hard those guys were racing in this final 50 kilometers and not know up the Mur, seeing Gilbert attacking and just that was his year he was really on.
Yeah.
And then out of nowhere, Nick Newens goes and wins it. So, I mean, it was...
The smartest bike rider won, not the strongest.
Yeah, exactly. And I had to go back last year and go and see it for myself with my own eyes. It was amazing.
Yeah. For me, it wasn't an individual performance. It's actually the Mur itself. And in 1995, I got to race up the Mur in a criterium that was post the Tour de France. And the pros raced in the afternoon. And I got a photo taken with Marco Pantani, and I looked like Frankie Andreo. You like that haircut, Wade?
And I love the T-shirt. It's
big T-shirts were in 1995,
yeah.
and I got the wrong film in the camera. The film was actually for projectors as opposed to actual photographs, but never mind. I've still got the photo with Marco.
That's good.
Looking forward to who's going to win this weekend. E3, Cancellara showed his strength, and Sagan showed it at Ghent-Wevelgem. What do you make of the mono across the line?
I don't like the mono. I like my victory salutes being somewhere in between the mono and, say, Cancellara's E3 victory
humble,
salute.
Wade Wallace, isn't he?
Well, Cancellara's was a little bit too humble. He looked like he just didn't care, right? Yeah. I just think it's just a little bit disrespectful and just a little bit too show off.
I love it. I love it. I thought it was fantastic. And I don't think he's been disrespectful to the riders behind. I think he's just trying to be flamboyant to the people that are there to witness him winning a race. And one day he will flip it right over the back, and that'll be a crack up.
And then people like Wade will get a laugh out of that. Let's have a look at some of the comments from a few of the riders that saw the performance of Peter Sagan. We heard from Greg Van Avermaet, who said, "I think Sagan is a bit stronger than the rest of us at the moment." Maybe, except for possibly Fabian Cancellara. And then Stein Vandenberg said there was no chance to follow his move, and Mark Cavendish said he's a machine. And he seems to be like a machine at the moment. It's going to take a strong man to get rid of him.
He is, and there is one very strong man out there in Fabian Cancellara. He did it at E3 in Harelbeke. They got to the Old Quermont, and he attacked. Sagan tried to go with him and couldn't, fell back with the rest of the riders. So, and I think that was the form guide, the tester, the box being ticked by Cancellara that his form is on song. And that's why he parked it halfway through Ghent-Wevelgem, so that he can just now freshen up for Flanders.
Let's hear from a guy who's ridden this race a few times and was second at Ghent-Wevelgem. Henk Vogels is a man who knows the race well. Henk, how does that second place sit with you now, 10 years on?
Oh, it's a great achievement, Matt, but, when you come to a finish of a classic, you'd love to win it, and you don't very often get to come for a win, so... it still hurts me when I see the photos and the old video footage, but great race, mate.
And Ghent-Wevelgem and E3 Harelbeke, we're using those as real indicators as to who can win the Tour of Flanders on the weekend. How do you rate those two races as form guides?
Well, I always used to call the Harelbeke the big test and a mini Tour of Flanders, because it literally is a mini Tour of Flanders. It's 50 kilometres shorter than the Tour of Flanders, but it's generally the same route. And a lot of the riders like to use that race as their absolute number one hit out and their big form tester for the classics, because it just mirrors Flanders. Whereas Ghent-Wevelgem can be a bunch sprint, and it's nowhere near as hard. It's only 3 or 4 climbs, but still a classic. So for me, always, if you looked at the top 10 in the Harelbeke, you could pretty much see the top 10 in Flanders.
Well, the format has changed slightly, Henk, in the fact that Ghent-Wevelgem is now before the Tour of Flanders. When you were riding the classics, it was always after, in between Flanders and Roubaix. What do you think the big stars will do now in this final week, the run into Flanders?
Well, they can't certainly train too much more. I think their motors are completely tuned up to where they're going to be. So there's no real panic training. It's really just rest and recovery. I mean, they put everything into their classic season build-ups. It's just a matter of tuning up. So they'll do a hard ride midweek and just take care of themselves, wrapping themselves up in cotton wool and try and get there as fresh as they can, because, I mean, these next couple of races are the hardest of the year for them.
Who's your pick to win Flanders?
Well, I hate to be someone who's going to agree with everyone else, but it's very, very hard to go past Cancellara. I did see that he parked it halfway in Gent-Wevelgem, which shows me that, you know, he's done what he needed to do, rode away in Harley-Baker and won that. He didn't want to get sick. He didn't want to stress his nervous system too much, and he parked it at the feed zone. Like I said, he'll wrap himself up in cotton wool, go home, and I think you're going to see a massive explosion from him, kind of 30 or 40k to go, because he just does not want to come to the finish with Sagan. He knows Sagan will roll him easy, and he's going to put the hammer down very early. And try and sort the men out from the boys. That's what the classics are about. You know, it's the tough men come out.
Henk Vogels, thanks for your time. On board with one of the favourites, Fabian Cancellara. Wade, who's your tip?
I'm going to go with Chavanel this year. Boonen looks like he's injured. He might have a full backing of a team behind him. He's been going well, and he's been knocking on the door for a long time.
Yeah, that makes sense, but for me it's Cancellara. He showed how strong he was at E3, Harley-Baker, and I think the disappointment of being out of the race last year with the broken collarbone, I think he's ready to fire.
I can't go past Peter Sagan. I can't see anyone dropping him, even Fabian Cancellara, and I can't see anybody beating him in the sprint. Who's your tip? Sagan, Cancellara, Hausler maybe? Go with Wade Wallace, Chavanel? Let us know your thoughts. The Melbourne Ironman was on this weekend, and it brought back to the top of my mind the relationship between cyclists and triathletes, which is one I've never really understood. Wade, why is there tension between the two groups when we've got so much in common?
I don't think it's tension, more of a friendly rivalry, because we do all ride together from time to time. But I think the thing is the rite of passage that cyclists feel that you know you need to build up with equipment as your ability goes up, and that's not necessarily the truth, but there is that feeling. Yeah. We think we're entitled to good equipment.
C grade, you should be on 105, not your
exactly,
race. What are you doing?
Exactly, but triathletes, bike shops would love them because they would just come in, give me the best of everything, because it is a bit of an older type sport and they have careers and everything.
They have real jobs.
Cyclists, they don't, right? So I think that's kind of where it possibly might come from.
I can't help but wonder whether there's that same tension between triathletes and runners and triathletes and swimmers, but I don't think there is. Speaking to James from the Bike Gallery, he was of the view that, well, those two sports are really individual sports, whereas cycling you do it a lot more in a group, so you've got that interaction much more.
Well, I don't see the rivalry as much as I used to. When I lived in Melbourne riding Beach Road, it was always the thing that you could tell a rider coming the other direction whether they're a good rider, an A grade, by their clothing or their position on the bike, and you'd give them a wave. If they were a triathlete, you wouldn't. Now, I've missed that.
Nobody waves anymore.
No one waves.
Cyclists, there's too many people.
But I live in Bendigo. I feel offended if Joe Bloggs down the road doesn't wave to me.
Yeah.
And I'll wave to absolutely everybody, and we're much friendly in the country than you guys seem to be.
We've got to bring back the wave.
Good country folk.
Yes.
Let's look at some of the numbers to compare them. Nicky Terpstra, Dutch national champion at Doors de Vlaanderen recently. His wattage output per kilo was 4.5 watts per kilo.
Unreal.
Which is massive for 200 kilometres, 4+ hours of racing. Craig Alexander, who's multiple Hawaii Ironman winner, he goes around at about 4.1 watts per kilo. So as athletes, one of the things I think the triathletes don't like is the, jack of all trades, master of none, but there's some serious numbers. Serious numbers. I've got a lot of respect for the triathletes, and covering the sport a little bit, it's a sport I really enjoy to work with because they're easy to interview because they're their own individual brand. They don't have a wage from a team, so they're really easy to work with. So the triathletes, we at the Bike Lane, we really love you. We enjoy going for a ride, but make sure you wave to Scott McGrory, whatever you do. Cyclists and Red Lights. It's one of the bugbears of motorists, and it's one of the great hobby horses of talkback radio. Marilyn Johnson from Monash University has recently done a study finding out why cyclists run red lights and who do. The good thing is most people now stop for red lights. I don't think that was the case 10 years ago. I've been guilty of it in the past. No longer. I always stop now. What about you?
Oh, in the past, absolutely. But now living in Bendigo, I must say that our cycling community up there, they never run red lights.
Self-policing is really good as well, and we're seeing that now, particularly on Beach Road.
Yeah. The bunch rides on Beach Road always get people into trouble and perception as well, because people in a peloton, even though you're not supposed to ride more than 20, it happens, and it's not because people are trying to catch onto the wheel. It's they don't know what people are going to do behind them. So that's always a bit of there's a very grey area. Nobody knows what to do.
Yeah. The stats suggest that 63% of people they stop at red lights. The reason the others run red lights, 32% saying turning left. which is a classic one because there's a lot of parts in the world where you can turn left on the red light if it's safe, but they're not the rules here. So we're representing the rest of the cycling group, so you've got to stick with the rules.
Should we perhaps look at the rest of the world and maybe adjust our rules accordingly? I'm not saying we should or shouldn't, but maybe we should at least have the discussion, because if it does work in other parts of the world, maybe we can make it work here.
It might actually help with traffic flow as well, but whilst the rule is in place, we need to stick with it. The other one, 24% of people say they're concerned that their bike won't set the traffic lights off. Hit the pedestrian crossing, hit the light.
Yeah. Although when you're sitting there at 5 in the morning and it's pitch black and there's not a car or person in sight, it's sometimes tempting, and I can't say that I always wait.
I had a tweet from Graham Kidd along that vein. If a cyclist runs a red light, nobody sees it. Did he really run the red light?
That's right.
Others in their comments were saying, Naomi Williams, a pretty good bike rider, she came back and said, I wait for green and then I chase them down. Have you done that? Have you abused a cyclist who's run a red light?
Oh, I can't say that I have, but and look, I'll give you another side of the story perhaps. As a former professional cyclist, and I'm not condoning running red lights at all, but if you're a professional, you're back here in Australia, and you're doing 3 to 5 to 6 hour training rides every single day, are the red lights almost like Mark Webber doing laps of the track at Monaco, but they've left the speed bumps in? So he has to slow down for every speed bump.
Train somewhere else. Go somewhere else to train.
I have ridden with Garrow before, and of course we always stop at the red lights, and he'll go and put it in the 15 and do these stomp intervals. I can't remember what they're called. And there's kind
Annoying is what they're called.
Yeah. But he puts it up to 700-800 watts, seated, gets a good spin going, and then lays off.
So he uses it at a training element.
Yeah.
But I think the tweet that really summed it up from me was from one of the ones that came in with anger, is his response, stating that people only remember the cyclist who doesn't stop, not those who do. So we're representing the larger group. When you are out on the bike, remember it's not just you, because the motorists, they remember the cyclist who runs the red light. So stop for them, and hopefully we'll all be a little bit safer. That's it for this episode of The Bike Lane. Once again, thanks to the guys from the Bike Gallery for hosting us. This weekend, the Tour of Flanders. Just to get it on record once again, Scott McGrory, your tip is?
Fabian Cancellara.
It's time for Chavanel.
Time for Chavanel. I think it will be Peter Sagan winning his first big monument. Give us your tips as well, and watch Scott and I call the race for SBS this Sunday night. Looking forward to seeing who it is that actually wins. And then we'll have bragging rights here next week.